Welcome to the AgriMinds podcast. If you're in agriculture and feeling the weight of responsibility, juggling work, family, and everything in between, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Casey Bull, coach, speaker, and founder of AgriMinds. Each week, we'll talk about the real side of leadership, how to think clearly, manage your time, set boundaries, and show up with intention, both at home and in the field. Let's get into today's episode. Have you ever believed something simply because that's just the way that it's always been? Not because you intentionally chose to believe it, not because someone sat you down and proved it was true, but simply because it's just what you grew up hearing? If that's you, then you are in good company. That's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. Everything that we know and believe was either taught or caught. And so today we're going to be diving into part 2 of 15 beliefs that have kept us stuck in agriculture. And if you haven't already listened to part 1 in the previous episode, go back and listen to part 1 and then come back to this episode and dive into the second half. Today we're going to be picking up right where we left off, diving into the remaining beliefs. And if I'm honest, I think some of these are some big ones. These are the beliefs that have influenced how we handle pressure, how we define strength, how we lead our teams, how we show up for our families, and even whether we believe we're allowed to ask for help or not. What does success actually mean? And remember that this is not about criticizing agriculture. I love this industry way too much to be doing that. This is about honoring the generations that came before us while also having the courage to ask this important question. Just because we believed a belief, does that mean we need to keep believing it? Just because that's what grandma thought, just because that's what grandpa thought or dad thought, does that mean that that holds true for me too? Some beliefs helped generations survive. They had to have those beliefs. Otherwise, who knows what life would have looked like. But our job today is to decide which ones are going to help us thrive in now and the ones that are going to help the next generation thrive. So let's jump right back in to belief number 8. Real people in agriculture don't need therapy or coaching. This is one that if you've been told this or if you've believed this for a long time, the hidden belief behind that is needing support means I've failed somehow. This is probably one of the biggest beliefs that we need to challenge because agriculture is full of incredibly capable people. And while I believe it's true for both men and women, we think, I should be able to figure this out on my own. We think, I don't need to call so-and-so. I want to figure this out first. But the question isn't, can you? The question is, should you? How much longer do you want to try and figure this out on your own, doing the hard thing? And I'll share a very quick story with you. I had to mow the yard the other day. And our tractor, it's got a mower deck on it, but it also has a bucket and a 3-point hitch and all the things. So anyway, I had to take the bucket off and put the deck on. And I hadn't done this very many times on this particular tractor. And I was like, I think I should probably be able to figure this out. I used to work for John Deere. I grew up on a farm. I should know how to do this, right? But it wasn't working the way that I thought it should work. I was like, okay, I can sit out here in 93-degree temperatures in my hot shop trying to, put this way and move this way and try to get this lined up and tweak this and tweak that. Or I can just call my husband and be like, okay, tell me how to do this. I really didn't want to because one, I felt like I was going to inconvenience him, right? He was at work. Am I interrupting what he should be doing? I should know how to do this. I should have paid attention better when he took the time to teach me, right? However, it wasn't productive for me to keep going. I didn't want to end up like breaking a finger. Like there are these big metal things, like these hooks that you have to flip backwards. And if your finger is in there, honey, say goodbye because it ain't coming back. And so I was just like, I really don't want to break my finger or something. And am I doing this right? I don't even know. And so I had to call him and I was like, okay, can you walk me through this one more time? And I had to swallow my pride because I really didn't want to call and ask for help. I really didn't want to do that. There's just some things that you don't have to figure out on your own. It's okay to swallow your pride and say, hey, I need a little bit of help here, right? And I want you to think about it in this way, right? There are some people who have a perspective that can help you that are not emotionally or financially tied to what you have going on, especially when you're thinking about it from the ranch or the farm perspective, or even in the business, right? Like maybe you're dealing with something, but you don't want to talk to your coworkers about it because that may make you look like you're incompetent or weak, or that you aren't really doing as well as you're leading on, or you don't really want to talk to your spouse about it, or maybe you don't even have a spouse, but you don't want to talk to them about it because, is that going to worry them, right? Or they're going to tell you biased opinions. And so sometimes it's nice to have that outsider perspective to give feedback or advice or ask questions to help you figure something out without rocking the boat in another way. And I say that because we talked about rocking the boat in the last episode, part 1 of this little series. And so if you haven't listened to that one, again, go back and check it out. But there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with figuring out how to do something, struggling, and then realizing, okay, I may need a little extra support here. People in agriculture should lean on other people in agriculture and maybe outside of ag too. But that doesn't mean that you've failed. It doesn't mean that you've, done something wrong because you decide to raise your hand and say, I need a little bit of help. Yeah, maybe you should be able to figure this out, but do you have to? You can lean on other people. I mean, take a look at like athletes, right? Every single team, every single athlete has a coach. Nobody looks at a professional athlete and says, why do they have a coach? Aren't they like an expert at this? Like they're in the big leagues. Shouldn't they know what they're doing by now? Does that mean that they're not good enough? No. A coach is going to help them get better. A coach is going to help them see things that they can't see, right? They're looking from a different perspective. They're not in there with them. The athlete can see right there where they are, whereas a coach can look out from a higher perspective or an outsider perspective. It doesn't mean that that athlete isn't good. It just means they have somebody with another pair of eyes. And, this shouldn't be any different for people in agriculture. Okay, belief number 9. If you want it done right, do it yourself. This one is huge in agriculture. I've heard this, I've said it, I've believed it. My clients have said it and believed it. But the belief that's actually formed behind that is that no one else can do it as well as I can. And I'm going to challenge this one. I know I'm guilty of it as well, but I'm going to challenge this one today because I hear this all the time. It's just easier if I do it myself. And maybe you've said that to your employees or your kids or your spouse or maybe your business partner. On the surface, it sounds very responsible. It sounds like you're committed to quality. However, underneath that thought of no one else can do it as well as I can, there may be some control issues. There might be a little bit of lack of trust. Yeah. If you want it done right, do it yourself. That's also saying that you don't trust that the person that you might delegate this out to is going to do a good enough job. But here's the thing. Every person who's good at what they do now wasn't good when they first started. They made mistakes. They asked questions. They needed somebody to believe that they were worth teaching. And I think one of the biggest bottlenecks in agriculture today isn't a lack of good, willing people. It's a lack of leaders who want to let go and delegate and take the time to teach. Because doing everything yourself does feel faster, but it does create dependence. Teaching takes longer. Coaching takes patience. Delegating feels uncomfortable and uncertain. But that's how you build people. And leaders don't just build businesses, they build other leaders. So I want to challenge that thought is that it is easier to do it yourself. Maybe, but what's that look like long term? So check yourself on that one a little bit. Belief number 10, keep your head down and let your work speak for itself. I feel like this one is a little bit more applicable to the ag job, like the corporate ag job, maybe farming and ranching, but this is very prominent in the workplace. Keep your head down and let your work speak for itself. Here's the belief that comes from this thought. Talking about my value is arrogance. This one's created so many problems, and people who are overlooked, people who are incredibly talented, incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly valuable, but they stay quiet because they were taught, don't brag, don't make it about you, just work hard and people will pay attention. There's some truth there. However, here's what I see. Nobody wants someone who only talks about themselves and doesn't deliver. But I don't believe that communication is bragging. Advocating for yourself is not arrogance. Sharing your ideas is not showing off. Leadership requires influence, and influence requires communication. So if you have knowledge that can help people, but nobody knows what you can bring to the table, you're limiting your impact. The goal isn't to be the loudest, most annoying person in the room. The goal is to have the courage to contribute when your voice matters. If you have something that can help other people, it's worth talking about. You're doing yourself and others a disservice if you just keep your head down and let your work speak for itself. Now, I do believe that there is a time and a place to prove a point. I'm stubborn enough to say that. I think that there is a time and a place for it. However, it doesn't mean that you're bragging if you talk about your work or explain why what you have to offer is worth it, especially when we're talking about it in interviews and things like that. So far we've talked about beliefs that impact how we see ourselves and how we show up for the people around us. But now I want to talk about some of the beliefs that are a little bit deeper, the ones that shape how we handle pressure, how we process things, and how we define what it means to be strong. So this next group of beliefs, these are the beliefs that I think have shaped agriculture for a lot of generations. And they're the ones that we have to be willing to question if we want to build a healthier future.
Hey, this is Casey. I've got something really unique and exciting I want to share with you real quick. I'm looking for a few mission-aligned partners to join me on this podcast. If you're a business, organization, event, or company doing work that supports the people, ideas, and communities that we talk about here, I'd love to hear from you. I'm opening up a limited number of partnership opportunities to feature businesses, events, resources, and opportunities that I genuinely believe would be valuable to this audience. This isn't about filling ad space with just anyone. It's about creating partnerships that make sense. If you have something that you'd love to put in front of this community and you're looking for a meaningful way to connect with an audience that cares about growth and purpose and making an impact, let's talk. If you're interested in becoming a podcast partner, click the link in the show notes and reach out. Tell me a little bit about what you do and let's see if there's a fit. I'd love to build something meaningful together.
So belief number 11, emotions don't belong in agriculture. I am going to stand on this hill until I die. They definitely do. And here's the thing. If you didn't have emotions, you would not be doing what you're doing right now. Every single person in agriculture is emotional. We're human beings. We have emotions. Some of us are really good at suppressing them and ignoring them. I don't believe that's healthy. I think that is the worst thing that you can absolutely do. But I also believe that some people let their emotions get the best of them. I believe that they are not very good at regulating their nervous system. They're not very good at making sure that they are keeping their emotions in check. Because there's two very different things there. You've got the people who are like, I don't have emotions. I'm not talking about it. I'm a robot. And then you've got other people who are so emotional that it just like, it's so intense and they don't have a control over their emotions. A healthy place to be is somewhere in between, right? Knowing when and where to let your emotions show up, regulating them, understanding them, processing them. I think that that's healthy. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that we've had in the agriculture industry is that feelings make us weak, or at least appear weak. Because when we hear emotions, we often think it means just overly sensitive, right? Oh, you're emotional. Okay, yes, I do have emotions. That does make me emotional. However, we just automatically assume that emotional means like dramatic, letting these feelings just completely control our decisions, and we're like all over the place. Like, come on, get real. That's not the case. Letting our feelings control our decisions is literally every single person in agriculture, whether you want to admit it or not. Most people, you may have a handful of people who definitely make decisions based off of business decisions or facts or things like that. However, there is emotion behind it. It's understanding what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and choosing how you respond. Like, that's the reality. Your emotions are going to show up whether you're acknowledging them or not. They show up in your facial expressions. They show up in how you respond to other people in your words or your actions. Like, they're there, whether you want to acknowledge them or not. They're there. The question isn't whether emotions belong in ag. They already do. They're here. The question is whether we're willing to become skilled enough to handle them. Yeah, I said that. Emotions are here. They're not going anywhere because you're a human being. The question is, are we going to do the work to become skilled enough to understand them? And I think that scares the living daylights out of people. I think it scares the daylights out of both men and women. I see this inside of AgriMinds. Here's something that's kind of crazy. So inside of the AgriMinds program, we talk about emotions. We go through an entire wheel of emotions module. However, I used to believe I'm not going to get any men in this program. As soon as they see that we're going to talk about emotions, they're going to be like, nope, I'm out. See ya. However, it's the women who are resistant to talking about this most of the time. I mean, obviously there's some exceptions. Both men and women want to talk about it, but there are some where it's like more often than not, it's the women who are like, I'm going to sweep that under the rug and hope to God nobody knows it's there. They don't have the time to address emotions. They're scared to address emotions because what are other people going to think? Are they going to judge them? But it's the men that are like, wow, now that I have a language around this, now that I understand it a little bit more, that changes so much. It changes how I process things. It changes my relationship with my spouse, like my kids. Once they understand it, they're like, oh, this is golden. This is so good. I truly believe that emotions have a place and they can be so valuable. It can help in so many ways. It's just being able to understand them. And it takes a skill. The emotional intelligence, it requires a little bit of practice and a little bit of effort to understand them. When you ignore emotions, they don't just disappear. They come out sideways in places that we don't want them to come out. Stress becomes anger, fear becomes control, exhaustion becomes resentment, disappointment becomes withdrawal. The best leaders aren't emotionless, they're emotionally aware. They know how to recognize what's happening internally so they can lead intentionally instead of reacting automatically. Gosh, that's so good. I'm going to do an entire podcast on emotions next time. I swear I will. This is going to be so good. I think there's so much conversation and I think there's so much power in being able to be emotionally intelligent and knowing how to utilize our emotions to be more successful, to have stronger communication, to have stronger relationships. Oh my gosh. I'm going to do an entire episode on emotions next. So hang tight for that one. Let's keep going in today's episode though. Belief number 12. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm passionate about that topic. Belief number 12, there's no time for boundaries during planting, harvest, or busy season. We get to work, we do the thing, then you can rest. Nope. The hidden belief behind that one is that my needs only matter when everything else is done. Here's the problem with that one. When is it done? When is the slow season? For real. Everything is always happening. There's always another task, always another email, always another thing to do on the farm, always another problem, always something in agriculture. There will always be a reason or excuse as to why now is not the right time. But the seasons that demand the most from you are exactly when you need those boundaries the most. Boundaries are not about doing less. They are about protecting what matters. And I think a lot of people get boundaries and requests mixed up. Boundaries don't require approval from anybody else. They are what you're willing to do or what you're not willing to do. A request is asking permission to do something, and somebody can tell you yes or no. It's a way to help you make better decisions. It's a way to help you communicate clearly. And a boundary isn't saying, I don't care. A boundary is saying, this matters enough that I need to make sure that I protect it. We do an entire module on boundaries inside of Agriminds where we talk about what boundaries are, how to set them, how to communicate them, how to stick to them. We have an entire guide on how to put a script together so you can practice saying it or in reinforcing those boundaries when somebody tries to cross them. It's so good. So check that out or message me if you want to learn more about the boundaries module inside of Agriminds. Okay, belief number 13. Delegating means you're not tough enough to handle it yourself. When somebody sent me this DM and when I posted about like, what are some toxic phrases that you hear in agriculture that you feel like have helped shape the industry? And somebody commented or sent me a message on this one. I was like, oof, that one's so good. We are definitely talking about that one. So the belief is delegating means you're not tough enough to handle it yourself. The belief that's actually hidden underneath that is that my value comes from being the one who carries everything. This one's huge for those leaders too, the people who are in managerial positions or in a position of influence. Many successful people have built their success by being the person who figured it out. They became the go-to person, the reliable one, the person everyone called, the one that has the skills. And that works until it doesn't. Eventually, the thing that made you valuable becomes the thing that limits your growth. Because if everything depends on one person, that's not strength, that's vulnerability. Great leaders don't build operations around themselves being needed for everything. That's not sustainable, first of all. They build people, they develop the people, they develop the capability in those people. They create systems. Delegation isn't saying, I can't do this. It's saying, this matters enough that I want more people equipped to do it well. Henry Ford is a perfect example of this. He is somebody who said, you know what? I may not know all of the answers. Yes, I'm building the business. It's my name. It's my reputation on the building. However, I want to bring in skilled people that I can hand these things off to them and trust that they're going to do it well. They're going to do amazing things in the way that they can do them. And we're going to build this business. Belief number 14. This is just how we've always done it. Now listen, I truly believe tradition matters. There's so much wisdom in agriculture that deserves to be protected. The lessons that are passed down, the knowledge gained through the experience, the changes, the practices that have stood the test of time. But honoring tradition doesn't mean refusing growth. You can have both. Both can be true. Every innovation agriculture celebrates today was once something new. The first person who tried to build an engine, the first person who changed the practice in their farming operation, the first person who questioned whether there was a better genetic or a better way to do something. They were probably told, well, that's not what we've done before, right? Growth requires curiosity, though, and leadership requires the humility to ask, what got us here? But also, will this get us to where we want to go? I think both can be true. We can honor and respect those before us and understand the tradition and respect how they got to where they were. However, it's also okay to pave a new path and to say, okay, cool, I'm still going to trust and respect that, but I'm also going to try this out and get curious about this over here too. Both can be true. And finally, belief number 15. You should know this already. The belief behind that, of hearing that, is not knowing something means I'm incompetent. This one might not be said out loud quite as often as some of the others that we've talked about, but I think it's one of the most damaging. Maybe you've heard, you should know this already, or figure it out. That's common sense. Didn't your dad teach you that? Well, that's kind of a dumb question. I've been told those before. And maybe you've never actually heard anybody say them, but somewhere along the way, you've probably felt embarrassed for not knowing something. And from that moment on, you stopped asking questions because the hidden belief became, if I don't know the answer, people will think I'm incompetent. I see this all the time, especially in young professionals who are entering into the agriculture industry that don't have anybody in their life that is tied to ag, but they were introduced to it in the school system or they saw somebody online and they're like, I want that. And this next generation that is even coming back to the family farm, right? Like a new manager trying to lead the team for the first time or somebody taking over an operation after a parent retires, right? Like they might be terrified to ask questions, not because they don't care, but because they don't want to look stupid. But can I let you in on something? The people who ask the best questions usually become the best leaders because they're so curious about learning and doing better. And here's the thing, leadership is not about knowing everything. It's about learning continuously. Think about it. I mean, agriculture changes every single year. Markets change, technology changes, equipment changes, chemistry changes, weather changes, regulations change. Literally never stops changing. So why would we expect ourselves to know everything if we're just starting out? Why would we expect ourselves to know everything even if we've been in here 50 years? The world is changing. Agriculture is changing. And so, of course, we're not going to know everything. We wouldn't expect someone to operate a brand new piece of equipment without reading the manual or at least asking somebody to show them how to run it or taking a few minutes to mess around with the levers to see what does what. Like there is newness. There are things that are going to be changed, right? Why do we expect ourselves to already know everything? And so if you've never been taught how to have difficult conversations or how to lead a team effectively or to how to communicate with your spouse or manage stress, if you've never learned it, of course, you're not going to know how to do it. Here's what I believe. The smartest person in the room isn't the one with all the answers. It's the one who's humble enough to keep asking questions, to keep being curious. That's what's going to create growth. I think that pride is what's going to keep us stuck. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, I should already know this, I want you to challenge that belief. Instead, try asking yourself, who could teach me? What could I learn about this? How can I approach this differently? There's absolutely no shame in not knowing. The only shame would be letting pride keep you from growing. So what question have you been afraid to ask because you didn't want someone to think less of you? If one of these beliefs stood out to you, if there was one thought of, wow, I've never actually questioned that before, I want you to sit with that this week. Awareness is where change starts. You cannot change a belief that you don't recognize. And here's the thing, if this episode resonated with you, I want you to know that this is exactly the kind of work that we do inside of AgriMinds. We don't just talk about productivity. We don't complain just for the fun of it. We actually talk about the issues, the beliefs that are underneath your decisions. Inside of AgriMinds, we work on leadership and mindset and boundaries and communication and emotional intelligence and creating sustainable success without sacrificing yourself in the process. We get curious about what do you think, know, believe, do, say that you've been taught that isn't really serving you, that's holding you back. And so if you're not sure if this is the right next step, that's okay. But I also want to encourage you that if you want to learn more, I'm going to put the link in the show notes and I would encourage you to start a conversation with me. All you have to do is find me on social media and send me the word growth or shoot me an email or click the link below to book a call. We're going to figure this out together. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about the future of agriculture and giving yourself the permission to at least get curious and build some awareness. And I'd love to have your feedback on this. If this episode resonated with you, please rate the show, share it with somebody who you think would benefit from hearing about some of these different belief patterns. And just remember, you don't have to figure everything out overnight, and you definitely don't have to carry everything the way that it's been carried before. You get to decide what you carry forward and what you choose to believe moving into the next season of your life. Okay, I'm rooting for you. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for being here today. If this episode resonated with you, make sure that you're following the AgriMinds podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, send this their way. These are the conversations that more people in agriculture need to hear. Talk to you next time.